Hello everyone. Um, Today, I am Regis, and today I will share some views on the book Persuasion and my analysis. Um, just maybe to help or to give some insights for English teachers they might um, want to discuss some issues in class with the students and etc. Um, so I read all of the Jane Austen's work, but today I'm going to talk specifically about Persuasion. So in Persuasion, the scenes are divided between countryside, upper crust, Lyme, a little bit, some scenes in Lyme, that's the beach place, and the shore, and Kennington Hall, and the big city, Bath, in England, United Kingdom. Some of Jane Austen's books have the same surroundings in the plot, so readers can be more comfortable and well acquainted with places in the story. The English people from 18th century are depicted fully through their personalities and values developed from society they lived in. There is a great deal of scenes touched with subtle irony, which is a great thing that I really enjoy in Jane Austen's stories, especially with some criticism to patriarchal system and supremacist, and always giving value to man and undermining women. So this is something that is sometimes hidden, sometimes more explicitly developed in the stories. So this subtle irony, known as for being Jane Austen's way of criticism towards society and people's manners. So it's interesting to note that, and what parts of the text talk about that, and that can give great discussions in class, that can give good insights for teachers and for the students. I have discussed these issues just in book clubs and also in my classes with my professor, and it's interesting though, that we can expand and bring to classes more often. Austen brought the Coy family, which cannot afford living in old standards anymore due to money issues and extravagant expenses, although it pretends to be in the same position in society that it has always been. So that is this worry about appearance and nobility, right? So a typical example of the decoyed society design is the figure of Sir Walter Elliot, who had a great income but ended up having to retrench his property, the mansion in Kennington Hall, in order to cut expenses. For him, having to cut expenses and live in a less comfortable way was almost a public failure. Oh, back then, right? And he struggled so much against the situation with much pride and stubbornness. So another important issue or interesting insight and topic for discussion is stubbornness or pride, nobility. What those feelings um, 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 what kind of rupture, let's say, those feelings bring in the interrelationships, or the family relationships, or the social relationship. It's interesting to bring and discuss these ideas too. This construct, these things build the subject in Jane Austen stories and build characters even nowadays, right? So it's something that we still have in society. For him, having to cut expenses and live in a less comfortable way then was basically not affordable, not possible, not a reasonable thing, because society demanded so much of him, or of his appearance at least. What was the most important thing to be or to pretend to be, right? So this type of situation must have been common in Austen's time, for her to give such importance for the characters of Anne's father above all his pride, foolishness, and nonsense of reality. There is also along the book a great deal of political criticism and society's behavior disapproval of the author's view, and these remarks can be noticed by the irony from characters' interactions, and sometimes in a subtle and delicate way. A trace also of Austen's writing. The subtle of her writing might bring people to think that her stories are just love stories, although some attentive eyes, if you pay attention to some important passages in the book, we may perceive that she saw more criticism and reflections about the traditional society she lived in. So she was critical of the time that she was living in. She was critical of the society that she was inserted in, some rules and patterns, that standard living that she had to cope with and respond to. So in those circumstances, we can think about what kind of freedom she really had as not Austen, but the characters. And it's a depiction of the society that she lived in. So what were the problems there, and why she was bringing this such and such characters, such and such feelings, such and such social situations. We readers can sense many narrow-minded characters and her criticism towards such and such. So Persuasion, focusing now on the book, on the structure of the book. Persuasion is divided in 24 chapters, in which the characters are introduced in a nice flow of events. It is noticeable that psychological features are basically ignored by the high society, and physical features as beauty and manners, and most important of all, money, were highly appreciated as to mean a person good, as good, and valuable or not, if they have a lot of money, so they're good and valuable. That was what was really important back then, and well, for the story, not in all situations, but in reality. But so in this sense, many aspects of psychology can be brought to nowadays world and discussed in a slight degree of change. In other words, in Persuasion society, it is noticeable that the position of snobbish, rich people is the one with moral values, although for Jane Austen, she depicts something else, right? She wants to bring the attention to the other discourse around this appreciativeness, or this importance. And the modest and humble are appreciated for the considered good characters in the novel. So that's the view of Austen's again, not the rich people in the novel, right? So the humble person, the poor, the widow, or the vulnerable, is discriminated by the high society, and this is described with irony by the narrator, showing that the person who is full of prejudice is the evil one, contrasting with the friendly and good-hearted character. The stubborn and silly contrasting with the clever and humble, and so on. So you can be poor and intelligent, you can be rich and stupid. Although sometimes she brings other other feelings and characters all mixed. But the interesting thing is that she does not fix identities departing from social status. So this is the tricky thing. This is interesting in her writing. She changes. She subverts this idea of rich and good and bad and poor, or so on, like fixed identities that people sometimes correlate, right? Identity and social position, social status. So the relation Jane Austen does with some of the rich characters in her novel shows readers some critics towards rich society and their behavior. It is seen in many passages of the novel that the most important value of a person is not money, since she empowers some humbleness of characters and puts some extravagances in a ridiculous description of the rich, right? The character of Vane's father and sister are depicted by the narrator as proud and vain, who had no moderation in the expenses and no modesty. People who spend more than they should to keep up with the good status in high society, just for appearances. She also brings these people as snobbish and not so agreeable, in opposition to other humble, modest, and very clever characters that had no money but dignity. An interesting passage that depicts this type of society is, opening quote, "Vanity was the beginning and the end of Sir Walter Elliot character. Vanity of person and of situation. Few women could think more of their personal appearance than he did." Another vanity of a soul is shown when the narrator declares Sir Walter Elliot considered beauty very important. He thought highly of himself and her daughter Elizabeth. Nevertheless, Austen describes scenes in which they are so ridiculously excessive, putting them in a dull spot in the novel, almost in a comic way, because of their behaviors and their beliefs. To be vain and beautiful instead of responsible and modest is not a real advantage for anybody, like the message behind the scene, right? So this can be questioned, this can be discussed as well with students. It's a nice insight that comes from the book. The passage between Anne and Lady Russell, opening quote, "We must be serious and decided, for after all, the person who has contracted debts must pay them," closing quote, page 1233. So in this passage, she shows what would be the right thing to do in a difficult situation, although Anne's families would not be able to afford doing the right thing, as the affirmation, because they are really in a bad situation, economically bad situation. Opening quote again, "What? Every comfort of life knocked off. Journeys, London, servants, horses, table contractions and restrictions everywhere," closing quote. Page 1233 again. "It is noticeable that Sir Elliot is not inclined to have the qualities of an honest man, because he cannot afford losing some comforts to pay debts," and at this point we perceive the irony of the situation, because he does not have enough money to buy his dignity. And worst of all, he seems not to care much as long as he has some comfort in life to live upon. So is this an interesting thing to discuss or not? Well, you can decide. I thought it was worthy of discussion, so that's why I brought here. Well, sometimes I see students valuing people departing from this situation also. I want comfort, so I won't do the right thing. But what would be this right thing? What would pain, everything, and suffering be the right thing? What are the discourses behind it? Who says that? What are the institutions that say that this is the right thing or not? And is this right or not, really? Or is that a right thing to do in this situation? Well, then we can also discuss the context of Sir Walter Elliot, right? And also Lady Russell, because they have different situations. So why do they have this kind of opinion? This is a serious criticism for people who spend more than they should and forget responsibilities and human values, etc. It is probable that in Jane Austen's time of life, this type of behavior was easily found among high society, and the criticism of her book go beyond that time, because we still deal with this type of situations nowadays. So nowadays we also see people behaving in a vain way, full of pride for having a more comfortable life, stepping on the head of the others, and for having material assets, acting their own ways in the respectful manner towards people around or towards people who have less, diminishing a humbler or simpler mind. Jane Austen shows that one forgets to behave as a valued human being when in power, guided by money and pride. So yeah, this type of criticism we see in not just in literature, but we see in society nowadays. We see in politics and many other private institutions. They have the power, they have the money, and they have the pride. The rest is just not important for them. But then we have to discuss the thing that, well, do they live in a bubble? Do they live alone in the world? Why do they think like that, right? So we have to discuss, and we have to argue against this type of behavior, and also bring the ideas that Austen put back then, well, more than a century ago. And we still are struggling to deal with that, because it seems that a lot of people wrote about those things and nothing changed so far. Yeah. So these are good insights to bring to class, to discuss with students, to improve our education, right? Literature can do that, can subvert, can point on issues of society, on issues of capitalism, capitalist system, and by discussing the issues, we can empower and educate people. Of course, many other criticisms about society against human values can be noticed in Persuasion, but money and vanity are some of the relevant, or the most relevant criticisms of the book. Well, thank you for watching. I hope I had helped a little bit in the insights, and I hope I had brought some interesting topics to discuss in class with your students or with your friends, or even to reflect. If you happen to read the book, happen to cross and grasp the book to read, and then you find it interesting. So, well, what I'm trying to say is that Persuasion is not just only another love story. It brings societal issues, problems since 18th century, but we still have um, many discussions, many topics for discussions to do concerning the issues of human values and human feelings. So we can start by doing that. Well, I hope I had helped. If you liked the video, I am not sure if I am going to continue recording them, because usually I don't have time. I keep reading to myself and reflecting, but I decided that, well, I may as well bring these ideas and listen to what people have to say to contribute to my feeling, to my views and insights as well, so we can share some ideas. Tell me what you think, and then if you're a literature professor, or you can help if you feel that you can help me with some ideas as well. It's just a short video. We cannot talk about everything here. Maybe I can record some more later. But it's just some ideas for those literature professors that are starting as I am. So it's interesting to develop the discussions. If you want to read my poems, or, well, I'm also writing 4 books right now. Well, I stopped 3 of them. I'm just focusing on one, and I'm doing my master's in literature, English literature, working with the women of the Beat generation. Which I may talk something later on in another video. But if you like to know more about my production, which is little so far, but I'm trying to improve that, to write more and publishing more. Well, I have a lot of things written, but I don't publish everything because I don't have helpers or agency or publishers, editors, or anything like that. But if you like to read some of my work, some of my poems and thoughts, you can visit the site that is appearing in the video right now and leave your comment, leave your suggestions, and I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed. Bye!